on mute. There we are. We've had a reminder. And until you're ready to speak. And when you speak or ask a question, it'd be great if you could mention any affiliation you have. For those like me who don't know everyone in the room, I'm sure most of you know each other, but I'm new to this, so that would be very helpful to me. So without further ado, Mayor Nick, if you could have your introductory remarks, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Martin, and also thank you, Helen, and good morning to all participants on the call. It's not the first time I've been along to the Natural Cambridgeshire Partnership Forum, but it's long overdue, and I have always enjoyed the updates that I get from the organisation. You've already made the point that the Combined Authority has set up a £1 million fund for nature, and we're working obviously with Natural Cambridgeshire and how we're going to deliver that. And the first 3 projects are going to speak about it. That's my drive to be here as much as anybody, because this is something that I believe I'm hoping to demonstrate from a mayoral priority, but from a combined authority, sort of an overarching organisation that its strength is really within its full partnership. The different authorities that make up the combined authority, be that the county or the city councils or the districts, in terms of being able to achieve the aspirations of what I think this group probably wants to see, I genuinely believe can only happen with the benefit of good devolution, a move towards maybe 4 more devolution powers, and hopefully working in partnership with the different constituents to deliver meaningful change. The Fund for Nature, very much driven by the idea of a programme where we wanted to show that there was a sort of nature-based projects and sort of bring in local capacity and green investment. And we provided that funding using Natural Cambridgeshire as the sort of appraising the applications. It's all about testing that proposition that there's an appetite for private third sector investment in nature and nature-based solutions to tackle the problems of the climate crisis. And through these pilot projects, we hope to see some change. We are doing other things, within the organisation at a more arm's length thing, public sector decarbonisation with a greater southeast net zero energy hub. And we know that's talking about work that we can do as a CPCA, stakeholders, including county council, city council, and indeed the University Edinburgh site. And obviously stuff that was done along with partners around solar park and ride. But we have got big ambitions, and I'll be the first to admit it feels slow. Some of that's not been helped by a kind of process of getting everybody in my own organisation to focus on it. But the direction is in the right way, and I think we are moving up. And with that, we're talking about other support that we're doing through the hub and Retrofit Academy, forming a partnership to support training the workforce required to do work across lots of regions around retrofitting. And our business board, as another note, we've now got some very strong representation from the agri-tech sector. And I think it's very telling and important that as a combined authority, and probably one of the more rural ones, but certainly one of the ones where the agri-tech industry is at the heart of some of the success of the region, we are beginning to have some really meaningful partnerships around so that we can take on those challenges of reducing climate and nature impacts to, at the same time, ensuring that we get the good growth and develop the clean tech sector. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that, because it was a big surprise to us, the Combined Authority, and I believe other authorities, that the announcement from the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, in view of what he saw as a government priority around the Cambridge 2040 vision, was a surprise. There is no doubt that the greater Cambridge economy is in dire need of affordable, and I always, when I say affordable housing, I actually am very much of the nature that we should have social housing. The affordable housing, I think, is often a name that's used, which I don't actually believe is actually in keeping with what is genuinely affordable for our residents. So there are some drives from central government where we are beginning to engage with the leadership, as in, I wouldn't say imposed, but as suggested by central government, And within that, we are obviously looking for the importance of, if there's extra funding, which will help, particularly with the role of Combined Authority, particularly around our infrastructure needs. There is no secret for myself is that I am absolutely wedded to making sure that public transport is a priority, and the most easy to and deliverable in a short time space is the proper kind of a bus network reform, bus service review, and hopefully with a move towards a enhanced partnership and franchising. That is, and you can look through anything I've ever said, that is not to say I ever have any problems with the bigger picture stuff around light rail, tram networks, which may be a part of a consideration of the area in the south to grow as you get more push to develop housing. But that's not to be done at the risk of the whole water stress. It's something I've talked about on ad nauseum, about we have to crack that, working with our partners, be that through Anglia Water, Cambridge Water. And in truth, in my representations to the team that have been sent out from central government, although there's a tendency to focus on Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire as this important growth area, in particularly around health sciences, but also, you know, with the inherent potential health growth. I see the real challenge is to kind of move the dial and bring in the whole of Cambridgeshire. Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, there is huge benefits by improving the connectivity, ideally with some investment at the Ely Junction capacity area, allowing north to south rail travel, and making it so that when people talk about wanting to come to this area, we are a very investable area that we don't just kind of see within a 10-mile radius of Market Square in Cambridge. And I think that will be the drive where we make sure that we any proposals about the Cambridge 2040 ambition are shared equally and fairly across the whole of our area. And all of that done whilst acknowledging the importance of biodiversity and bringing on the development of our statutory local nature recovery strategy. So we really focus on getting those existing areas of nature and mapping them, look at some specific proposals for creating and improving the habitats for nature and wider environmental goals, and just continue that sort of working together, not just at local government level, national government, but with you, strategic partners, third sector, and actually the people doing the day-to-day job that helps grow our economy, but also has the respect to the economy that I believe. I would actually just make this point, and you know, I'm always grateful when people acknowledge my other title as a doctor. I still enjoy that. I was in the hospital only yesterday dealing as the children's doctor, and my great belief is that a lot of the push that we could do around some strategic work around public health improvements, working with healthcare and social care providers in a bigger picture with a real focus particularly on the environment, by creating a healthier, ideally wealthier kind of constituency in terms of our physical makeup and our health and well-being, both that physical and mental, that will also help in the drive towards kind of improving the environment for all. The point being is, let's get out there, let's create those green spaces, let's encourage people to be more active, get out and about through our wonderful county, you know, and some real gems that we can find. You know, we are working with a climate partnership, which Claire, and there's a climate action plan, and there's some really great ideas that we're looking at, the Huntingdonshire Biodiversity for All, the Climate Change Care Home Programme, looking at sort of owned nursing and residential care homes to help reduce their emissions. And then as a final note, you know, we continue that role with the Greater South East Net Zero Hub, where although there was a challenge around the skills and the availability of work force to deliver a retrofit on a bigger, older, wider southeast area, we are improving our delivery, although it, to be fair, was frustrating at the top. As I said, I'm here because I want to hear about Fleam, Dyke, Habitat Bank. I'm here because I want to hear about Priory Farm Project, and I'm here because I want to hear about Rewilding, Coton Countryside Reserve, because they, as I understand, are the early identified projects that we're going to be supporting from the Combined Authority. And my attendance here to hear the experts in the room, not a doctor and a mayor talking about ambition. I want to hear from the people who are going to deliver the change that we all want. So thank you for listening to me. I'm really happy to take questions.
Thank you, Nick. And people have some questions now. And thank you for your remarks. I mean, whilst you say we want to hear about the projects we do, but also hearing from our mayor is important as well. So thank you for that, and actually also putting in context the projects, which I think is important to have done. So if people have some questions for Nick, well, I think we have about 10 minutes for those questions before we move on to the projects themselves. So any potential questions, please? People are still waking up this morning, so
I think they must.
I'm sure they're saving them up for later.
I'm happy to get involved in questions later down the line. All I know is that at 10 o'clock, I've got to do a deal with the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, which is obviously an important thing about the environment. And if there's any links you want to talk about that, but I'm happy to take questions all the way through.
Great, thanks very much. And we do know that you need to be off. Peter, you have a question, I think. Peter Lanshoff.
What will it take to get approval for the new cancer research hospital?
Well, that was one I didn't expect. The Cancer Research Hospital, I'm speaking more as from a medical point of view. I think the real challenge on the site at the Cambridge University, healthcare campus, is that they've actually been pushing two objectives, both the Children's Hospital and the cancer research one. As far as I understand, speaking to Roland, Chief Executive, they're further down the line in developing the outright business case, and I think are more likely to be able to deliver a cancer research specialist hospital than they are the Children's Hospital for the whole of the east of England. Declaration of interest as a paediatrician, personally, I think they should be focusing on delivering a children's hospital rather than a cancer specialist unit. You may see that differently, but I'm speaking more as a medic rather than as a mayor. It's not something that we have direct control of, but in the context of this meeting, there are a lot regular sort of bi-directional conversations between ourselves and the leaders on site at the healthcare campus, and all aspects of environmental effects by building more buildings on site there, which I believe inevitably will come at some point, and also the challenge there, particularly about how that reflects on more work commuting into that area, is all part of our longer term LT local transport connectivity plan. I absolutely believe that we need to really focus on improving public transport ask, and that again goes back to trying to improve the buses. But the actual delivery of a hospital is not within the gift of the local mayor. I support the ambition, but probably would prefer them to focus on the Children's Hospital before that.
Thanks, Nick. A further question now from Laurie Friday. Laurie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nick, for all your support for everything that's going on in this area. I'd be very interested to, I'm Cambridge University Centre for Landscape Regeneration. Sorry, I forgot that. I'd be very interested in your views on the balance between doing things at a very large scale and doing things at a very local scale in Cambridgeshire, because a lot of things that are going on in Fens are ever bigger, bigger fields, more joined up transport on sort of large infrastructure and so on. But it's also really important to work where people are. And I just wonder, from the Combined Authorities point of view, what's your view on that balance of the priorities?
That's a really good question, Laurie. I guess I would always want to prioritise the ones that, because, it's the old adage is that lots of people come to not just the Combined Authority, they come to the county council, they come to the district council, and lots of people say, we want to do this, can you support it? What we want to do is make sure that any money that we spend happens with quick delivery, and also comes part of a bigger strategic ambition. Well, I think the strategic ambition's already there. We don't have to keep reinventing the wheel in terms of the work that was done by the Independent Climate Commission. It's a very clear narrative as to kind of the direction of travel. I'll give you some reality here. Politicians, and I speak as a politician here, big projects look good, and if you can get behind them and they're delivered quickly and in a time frame before you're next due to be elected, they appeal. On a personal level, this is where I always told, speak as a doctor, because that's when you speak truth. As a doctor, I've very quickly realized that sometimes it's the kind of small things that you do at a local level that have the most effect, but they don't always stack up in terms of the initial cost-benefit analysis. I'm a fan of the latter, and I think there is something that can be said by smaller projects. And I think the example, I mean, I would argue that the Combined Authority in something I've definitely been keen to see is work with Fenland Soil about the work that they've tried to achieve and working with local farmers. So in answer to your question, I like small, I like involving at a low level, and I think it's then the job of the mayor to be very visible at the low level with a view that that promotes better change from the local community. Although it doesn't harm for something very visible, particularly if it's a good environmental win and it's seen, it's something that's easy to hang on for local media, for local authorities. So I haven't really answered your question, which is classic politician ground. But personally, I like to see the small groups. Hence, one of I guess what I'm trying to say, I would love there to be another 10 million, 1 million funds providing work and support to another 3 organisations, because that would be, if they know each of those organisations says to another organisation, this is what we're doing, maybe the message spreads better that way.
Thank you very much, Nick. That's a great message, and also ties to the 3 projects we'll be hearing about in a few moments. Next question, Sue James.
Hi, Sue James, Trees and Design Action Group, which actually has no reference to my question. I actually sort of read Grove's sort of Cambridge, South Cambridgeshire growth area thing with a degree of sort of shock, because I agree with you that it should be the much wider Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area. But how could organisations like the Natural Cambridge Partnership help show that this is with the extent that needs to be considered, and that just the focus on Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire is too limited and actually has potentially lots of unintended consequences?
Well, lobby and lobby hard, because everybody's doing it. You know, try and get a sit down with Peter Freeman at the earliest opportunity. Encourage. I mean, this is going back to the kind of politics of it all. You know, get the local communities on board. You know, sometimes around specific points of concern. You know, often people are reactive. It's about that proactive approach and make sure your voice is heard. I think there is another argument to a lot of very good narrative, and a lot of good campaigning is often done in the very area that is most at threat. I think if there was a bigger push at a wider area, you know, from the Fenland, East Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire area, saying we want to be part of the solution, and this balance of, yes, we want to drive economy with good growth, and almost kind of use the, I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I genuinely was shocked at what was kind of being proposed. And I'm saying this is wrong. This can't happen, you know. And and hats off to the Environment Agency that they have been robust in pushing back against the kind of damage to the water aquifer in the area. Because interestingly, it's the only reason that developers are not running, onwards at the moment. And I think, interestingly, developers are now listening, and they're actually, so as they're putting proposals forward, they recognise the importance of grey water recycling in the kind of proposals, the housing they put together, making sure that water resource management becomes part of the bigger picture. So it kind of goes back to the first, lobby hard, but I think there's a real desire, and I would love to see the leadership in Fenland, East Cambridgeshire taking more of a drive, along with community groups, which there are out there, but they're not as loud because they just don't have as big a voice, saying they're part of the solution here, and at the same time getting the growth into their areas. So moving the focus away from that, and absolutely, ultimately, that has to be helped by us at the Combined Authority by improving connectivity. So if you're not aware about the Ely Junction capacity enhancement and what we would like to see happening through there in terms of improved rail to make commuting, to make movement of the public a lot quicker, because you get more frequent travel through that area. And then as a final play, the combined authority is very keen to see innovation around light rail links between Wisbech March and Chatteris. And ultimately, we've all got to get behind the ambition of what the development of the reservoir in Chatteris is all about, because that is going to be, you know, is something that we need, full stop, let alone, you know, the idea that it then lets more development, but we need it anyway. So let's get behind it. It's surprising how that landed in terms of local population. And I think there's a real boon to be said by focusing on the Fenland area and the good people of Fenland, offering up that area of the county as a resource in terms of where we're going to have a new reservoir, the first one in the UK for over 50 years. You look at the benefits that Grafton brought to the external side of Huntingdonshire. Let's just see how some real focus on what working with Fens and Fens communities.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Sue. Very interesting, actually, that one of the roles I think Natural Cambridgeshire can have is to bring those partners together to amplify voices and give that sense of a community that can work together. And one of those events, actually, my first event to go to was a meeting convened by Peter yesterday, Peter Lanshoff, around water. And it does seem to me at this very early stage of my involvement in this agenda that water is that critical issue. And Peter actually makes the point in the chat that actually his question about the hospital was related to, in an indirect way, to water as well, because the Environment Agency are holding up the proposal because of water worries. And water, as I say, does seem to be an overarching issue here throughout. So clearly something we might come back to later. But if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the projects. Any further questions from anybody quickly? In that case, we'll move on. And if Martin Baker is ready to give us the update. And these are the projects funded from the fund from nature made available by the Mayor and the CPCA, which are approved, and we're just going through contracting. So hopefully starting very soon and getting on with the progress that you're looking for, Nick. Martin Baker, are you ready to make your presentation? Your slides are ready. Morning, Martin. We haven't met yet face to face, so I've met you on screen at least. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. So we've only got 7 minutes, so I'll rattle through and get onto the Fleam Dyke rather than the Wildlife Trust standard blurb at the start of the presentation. But just to remind us that we're one of the largest local charity dedicated to all aspects of wildlife, and that we do that through managing land, through providing advice to others, through working with local communities and supporting them, and also educating, providing education services for young people, and a range of training courses as well for all ages. Fleam Dyke is one of 3 ancient monuments that stretch between the Fen Edge and what was more wooded areas in Saxon times on the hills towards Suffolk and Essex. There's a Devil's Dyke at Newmarket, Fleam Dyke and Brant Ditch as well. And Fleam Dyke itself stretches from Fulbourn Fen southeast, crosses, well, the A11 goes through it, the dual carriageway, and carries on up towards Balsham. The area that the Wildlife Trust is currently in the act of purchasing is a section that runs from Fulbourn Fen up until the A11 hatched green on this map. And the area includes both the Fleam Dyke itself and an adjacent strip.
Martin, sorry to interrupt. Can you just advance your slides, I think, or that's not.
Sorry, that one I can't. Sorry, to fit it all on.
We can see your excellent slide, but seems to be stuck on that one.
Is it work? Is it working?
We've just
no, it's not moving forward yet.
Oh, it's going forward on my screen, but
all right. Helen, is there something we can fix on this, or
I wasn't able to download the slides, hence why Martin's driving them himself. Let me just see if
You want to stop sharing?
I wasn't able to download slides that Martin.
Did Peter have them?
Ah, yes, Peter. Can we cue you
Peter,
in? Peter? Is Peter with us?
Martin, I think you might have been sharing your desktop rather than the presenter view. So it might be,
is it?
yeah, so
Okay.
you might want to reshare it again and then just share the different screen.
Right, okay. So go and Zoom.
thanks, Stuart.
Great to have
Well,
some.
I seem to have lost Zoom.
We can still see you.
Oh God, I don't. Right, okay. Right. Share screen. Try again. Exit advance. Share. Sorry, is it still done the same thing?
We've got the opening slide.
You have.
Yeah.
It's still the same thing, Martin. Though you've got your schedule, your PowerPoint, not the presenter view.
Oh, sorry, that's confused me.
Maybe if you just come out of the presenter view, you can just click through to the next slide. Yep, and then you can just go on to the next slide by just clicking on it. That works.
That works. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so the map shows. Sorry about that. Usually use Teams, not Zoom. So yeah, so the map shows section of Fleam Dyke from Fulham Fen down to the A11, which is the current area we're intending to acquire, which includes the SSI and Ancient Monument Fleam Dyke, and an adjacent strip of arable land, which I'll come on to. Fleam Dyke itself is site of special scientific interest for its remnant chalk grassland, but it's also a scheduled monument, a Saxon earthworks that dates from the 6th or 7th centuries. It's a whole history and presentation in itself. So I won't go into the wonderful history of the Fleam Dyke. But obviously, when it was created in a sort of very different landscape to what we have today. I'll just quickly run through some of the key species. It's, as I say, chalk grassland is the main purpose. It's the main designation for the site of special scientific interest. Range of plants from greater knapweeds and scabious, cluster bellflower, eyebrights, orchids, the range of chalk grassland plants that you would expect. Also rich in vertebrates, whether chalk-hill blue, brown Argus butterflies, bloody-nosed beetles, a range of moths such as dusky sallow, silver wye, and no doubt we'll find ever more once we're more fully involved in the site. But coming on to the sort of project itself, and at the moment, the Dyke is surrounded by arable land. This view looking back towards from the A11 end, looking back towards Fleam Dyke Pumping Station on the left, shows the sort of arable fields either side. The area that we're going to acquire is 50 metres in the 4 arable fields to the right of the Dyke on this slide. And you can see here that actually the Dyke, lots of it is covered in scrub. Basically, it's become separated from the adjacent land. It's pretty impossible for anyone to manage. I would say even if the Wildlife Trust just owned the Dyke itself, we'd struggle to keep it clear of scrub and manage it effectively. So the reason we're looking to acquire the adjacent arable land or strip of it is to create a more sustainable management and grazing unit that allow and also starts to reconnect the Dyke with its historic landscape setting, which would have been set within a wider area of grasslands and arable fields, not just arable cropland. The other reason for purchasing the arable land is to create new chalk grassland habitats and potentially some bits of other sort of scrub and woodland, but mainly grassland, with a view to hopefully bringing in payments, as Nick described, from sort of third parties for environmental services, whether that's as a habitat bank is the primary option to create biodiversity credits for sale, but also potentially in putting the land down to grassland from arable, it may be that we can help demonstrate some protection to the underlying aquifer that also allows for payments related to protection of the aquifer should opportunities come forward in the future. The reason to have the habitat bank land is also in effect to cross-subsidise what is the very costly and difficult management of Fleam Dyke. So with that, that's the sort of the key principle behind the current project. But I should say that we very much see that as just a first phase. What we'd like to do is work with the landowners on both sides of the Dyke to try and create larger area chalk grasslands and wildlife habitats either side of the Dyke to restore the landscape setting of the monument, but also to create, hopefully, a larger natural space that can also provide accessible natural green space in time. At present, the current project doesn't include any access because it's a very narrow strip, 50 metres, and we'll be focusing on the habitat outcomes. But if we could secure a larger area in future, then the opportunities for creating circular walks from Fulbourn and Great Wilbraham and taking in parts of the Dyke and parts of the new grassland and other habitats either side of the Dyke would provide much needed natural green space for Cambridgeshire, which we're not just short of health infrastructure, education infrastructure, transport infrastructure. Cambridgeshire is really lacking in natural green space. We don't have the downland, the open access downland, moorland, coast, forest or commons that many other major cities and growth areas have, that people can actually have accessible countryside on their doorstep. I live in Cherry Hinton here. There's no public footpath from where I live out into the countryside across the road. So in time, Fleam Dyke, this first sort of habitat project, it's relatively limited. It's a start, it's a part of a bigger, wider vision that will hopefully deliver much more, not just for nature, but also for people. So with that, I shall end.
Thank you very much, Martin, and pretty much on time as well, even allowing for the full start. So I think we've got time for a few questions to Martin before we move on to the next presentation. And since he'll be leaving us at 10 o'clock, that Mayor Nick might have the first opportunity to ask a question. If you've got any questions on this particular presentation, Nick.
Look, I just like the idea of it. Funny enough, I don't know if it was you on the radio yesterday, because the Fleam Dyke was being discussed on Radio Cambridgeshire, so it sort of highlighted the importance of it. I heard quite a few local residents. So no, I've got no specific questions. As I say, I'm here.
Any questions? Thank you. Any questions from the full audience, or we can hold them to the end and have a more general discussion. In that case, we're up for the next.
Martin, I have my hand up. Can I ask a question?
Oh, so sorry, Chris. Not nice reminder. Thank you, Chris.
No, it's tricky when there's loads of people on the call. Hi, Martin. I haven't seen you for a while. Interesting project. So you're designing this project. Which ecosystem service markets are you proposing? Have you done an audit of them, and where are the units going to come from?
The Habitat Bank element, we're confident that there's going to be plenty of biodiversity credits available because we're going to be an early adopter here. So we're going to be in a very good, strong position. We're already getting inquiries as a wildlife trust from a number of small developers and this is before biodiversity net gain becomes mandatory in November. So when it becomes mandatory, there should be easily sufficient scope. I did a back of envelope calculation looking at the housing allocated up until 2036 across Cambridgeshire, and our habitat bank is only going to be about 10 hectares, but hopefully expand to 40 hectares. There's probably space with the current housing allocations, and that's not the commercial or transport infrastructure. I didn't even look at those for another 20 habitat banks of 40 hectares just with the existing housing allocations. and many of those won't be providing BNG because they've already got permission. So if you roll forward to 2041 and beyond, and the amount of housing that may or may not come, and then you add the commercial infrastructure developments and employment sites, and then the whole transport infrastructure, there's going to be a need for an awful lot more habitat banks all the way from Peterborough down to Cambridge.
So BNG is going to be your
That's the main
source.
one. The other ecosystem services, frankly, we don't know. It's what is the market? Who's a willing seller? Who's a willing payment? It's just too early on anything other than BNG at the moment. Things are, we'll have to watch this space. I can't predict what the future is going to be. It's the government talks a lot about it, but it seems very nebulous to me at the moment.
I think that's a sensible choice because of the habitat you're trying to develop. FWAG are progressing quite well with the soil carbon, and there's a group also working on hedgerow carbon, so they may be suitable. But yeah, that sounds like a good sort of choice. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. We'll have to move on to. We've got time for 2 quick questions, but if Martin, we keep the answers fairly to the point. Councillor Laura Davenport Ray.
Yes.
Laura.
Hi, Martin. First of all, congratulations on the award. My question is, what is the size of your award, and how is it made up? What different elements are you going to be spending it on?
Right. To start with, the Combined Authority are providing about 30% of the overall initial phase of the acquisition and restoration project. The initial phase is about £320,000, of which we're going to get 90,000 from the Combined Authority. That is a loan that will partly pay for a third of the land acquisition price, but will also help create the infrastructure and the seeding for the habitat bank land. And the other money that Wildlife Trust raise will help that we need to raise ourselves will be going towards the rest of the land purchase costs, but also the restoration of Fleam Dyke, SSI and Ancient Monument.
Thanks, Martin. Sue, and I also note, Sue, thanks very much for the mention in the chat for your upcoming seminar that people may be interested. Sue,
it's sort of a question. It's a bit of a concern. So I won't go into all my BNG concerns, but is there a concern that habitat banks can offer get-out clauses when we actually want housing and linear transport routes and things all to have sufficient and make a conscious effort to incorporate green infrastructure and all these things, because that's where people are living?
Thank you for asking that. Biodiversity net gain is related to biodiversity. It's not a substitute for good planning and green infrastructure provision. And with the best will in the world, that even creating high quality green infrastructure as part of new developments, the quality of the habitats are much reduced because of the people pressures, the recreational uses, the dog disturbance, the cat predation. So they're not, biodiversity net gain is not a substitute for green infrastructure planning and provision as part of good development. It's to provide that compensation for the biodiversity loss that inevitably arises from all development as land is changed from open land to built land. And we must separate the two and not conflate them.
And continue to pressure developers to properly put green infrastructure and all those things into their development.
And still to create wildlife rich, nice habitats as part of development. That is good green infrastructure.
Does all this just quickly ask, can I just quickly ask, does this all therefore link to Natural England's green infrastructure framework? Or is Cambridgeshire taking its part in this sort of grand connectivity that we're trying to achieve?
I think that's for others in the local councils to answer, not me.
Thanks, Sue. We'll have to come back to that one in the wider discussion later, perhaps, if we can. If we move on to the second project, because time is pressing now. James Anderson, regarding the Priory Farm project. James.
Yeah, hi, morning everyone. I'm just going to see, I'm a bit new to this Zoom thing. I'm just going to see if I can share screen.
I think Helen may have your slides already. Helen, do you want?
Has Helen got my map? That might be helpful, actually.
I don't. I didn't. Did you send any slides, James?
I didn't. I've got a map here, and I'm hoping it will come up.
You should be able to share your screen.
Can you see that?
No.
You can't see the map, right? I've got it. Why is that not coming up? Sorry.
That's all right.
No, let's close that a minute. So it says whiteboard. Do I want white?
Share screen.
Opens. Sorry.
Should be
Can you see that now?
No. Should be share screen. There's a.
Yeah, it's come up. So I say share screen, and it comes up with either desktop, whiteboard, iPhone, system preferences, optimize for video clip, basic.
James, have you got a green share screen button at the bottom of your screen?
Yeah.
Have you opened the document? Open the document separately, then do share screen, and then you'll see the document, and then you can just press that and share.
Okay.
And if you get a step in between that asks you if you want the desktop or the whiteboard, pick the desktop, and then the document you've got open will be available.
Okay, so I've got that. Right, if I minimize, so I've got it on my screen. If I minimize it to get back to the, so there's no option to try all this before you get onto Zoom, is there? So let me get.
Okay, are you able to start without the slides?
Yeah, let's go without the slide. So yeah. Okay, can you see me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so our project is about 200 hectares. We farm at Needingworth. We've been in stewardship for a good number of years. The farm splits into two, basically, a northern block and a southern block. Southern block is mainly grassland, flood meadows around the River Ouse, River Great Ouse, and the northern block is basically intensive arable land that we share farm with our neighbours next door that's been in arable since we bought it in the 90s. Although we've done a lot of stewardship work with hedgerows and grass margins, the actual arable land itself is pretty much entirely continuous wheat. So the plan is to take that arable land and put it into moderate or low intensity grassland by obviously sowing new grassland seeds, a high diversity seed base over the next sort of 2 to 3 years, taking it out of arable production, and also looking at the BNG market. Obviously, with the developers now having to offset in November, offset their BNG element, we're looking at that market there to access some funding. Yeah, and then the more southern block, the land by the river, to try and increase the diversity there with the sward. It's in places it was managed quite intensively in the past, but as I said, it's been in stewardship now for some 20 odd years, and the diversity is coming back by that management. But we're looking to increase, the biodiversity more by introducing wildflower mixes. We already cut it for hay. So by that management, we should be able to get some more biodiversity in there. Sorry, it's a pity I can't share this map, because that would really show where we are. The good thing about where we are, we're quite close to the RSPB reserves at Fen Drayton Lakes and the new Ouse Fen. So our that's south of the river, and obviously we're north of the river. So although the river forms a barrier, the biodiversity would link both sides of the river. We're also possibly looking at landscape recovery, which is a project set up by DEFRA, which gives some funding for projects similar to ours. We're trying to link that up with fellow farmers heading north through the ooze washes, either side of the ooze washes, taking in the new Fenland Reservoir, and linking up with farmers further north at the top end of the ooze washes. So we're possibly looking at getting some funding there for, which would be pretty much more sort of landscape recovery and that sort of thing.
James, thanks very much.
Yeah,
I'm a bit impressed on give us an idea of
it's probably easier if you ask me questions and I answer them rather than me.
Well, yeah, we've got a couple of minutes for those questions. So again, because Nick will be having to leave us at 10, so if you could ask if he's got any comments, Nick. From our point of view, very pleased to have a farm-based project actually in the first tranche of approved projects.
James, lovely to hear it. I'm obviously frustrating when you're working with technology, but I'm not a million miles away. I'm currently in Huntingdon, and possibly, why don't you invite me over? I'd love to see it in person sometime. That would be lovely. But secondly, I have actually done the group about the Ouse Valley Trust. There's a community group that I've been along to and support that. Are you in direct contact with them?
Yes, yeah, and there's a new, what we call the old Ouse Valley Trust, and a new, I think it's called the new Ouse Valley, Great Ouse Valley Trust or something. So that's running sort of side by side, and we're sort of in contact with them. My brother's actually
very happy to link up, because I don't know if you made it there, but I went on one occasion, probably about a year ago, to Hemmingford, looking at the ambition that they've got about that Ouse Valley Way, and very keen to support a narrative as a sort of potential heritage asset, something in terms of developing a whole host of kind of opportunities there around getting people into the visit in the area. So the work you're proposing is very much in tune. And as I say, if you want to send something to the office, I'm more than happy to try and find a time to pop in and see in person.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Ouse Valley Way actually runs sort of right through the middle of the southern block, across from St Ives to Holywell, and then on, clearly following the river, sort of north and east towards Erith.
Thanks, James, and I'm sure many people will be interested in the project. If there's any more details we can get out, we will do. If we can move on next to the third of our presentations, which is Rewilding Coton Countryside Reserve. And James, if you're out there, James Littlewood.
Morning, Martin. Morning, everyone. Helen's going to do some slides for me, hopefully. So, Helen, if you're able to pop up my first slide. So, Cambridge Past, Present and Future is a local charity that protects the beauty of Cambridge and its environment. The charity owns around 300 acres of farmland on the western edge of Cambridge, close to the village of Coton. It's on the border of the City and South Cambs District Council. It appeared briefly on the screen there for those of you who don't know this.
That was Tom's presentation. I'm actually clicking on your presentation. But
okay, right. I'll carry on, Helen, while you're doing that. So 15 years ago, a Coton Countryside Reserve was established on this land to the west of Cambridge. It's still mainly farmland, but the charity has provided visitor infrastructure such as parking, bridges, surface paths, and 8 kilometres of permissive paths. And we've also created some new habitats, including planting new woodland, orchards, scrub, hedges, and establishing some meadows and ponds. It's a long-term project for our charity to improve this part of the Greenbelt to better benefit people and the environment. And as funds become available, we're creating more habitats and improving visitor facilities. It's definitely still a work in progress, but our vision is for a large, nature-rich area that can provide health and well-being for the rapidly growing population of Cambridge, especially the new communities which are being built nearby in northwest Cambridge. This vision is also recognised as an opportunity area in the Cambridge Nature Network. So you can just see the purple dot there on the western side of Cambridge. Helen, if you keep that slide on, that's perfect. I'm just going to move on to that one. So the project that I'm introducing today will convert 16 acres of arable farmland into wildlife habitat, including 6 acres for an innovative integrated construction wetland system that will treat wastewater from Coton sewage works to reduce pollution entering the River Cam catchment. So currently wastewater is treated at Coton sewage works, which if you're looking at this map is sort of to the top left of the 2 blue bits on the left-hand side. And then it travels through a pipe and is discharged into the Bin Brook, which is the stream on the right of that diagram there. This discharge currently doesn't meet water framework standards, and the Environment Agency has given Anglian Water until March 2025 to improve the water quality discharge. Now, the standard method for water companies to remove the pollutants is through a process of chemical washing using ferric sulfate. This has no benefit to nature. It generates significant carbon emissions associated with producing the chemical and transporting, and it also increases waste slurry. So our project proposes an alternative nature-based solution to the problem, which will provide a benefit for nature, reduce CO2 emissions and provide public amenity. So the project involves creating 5 shallow pools, which are shown blue here in this slide. And water leaves the sewage treatment works, and then it passes in turn through each of these different pools before the pollutants are absorbed, and the water is then discharged into the brook much cleaner than it left the sewage treatment works, meeting the water framework requirements. The pools themselves create new wetland habitat, but we will also be creating new habitats on the land around the pools. And that will be a mix of meadow, scrub and woodland habitats. And additionally, we'll also need to break a field drain to create the pools on the right-hand side of the diagram here. And so we're going to take that opportunity to, because that carries diffuse pollution, is to bring that drain above ground. So the sort of bit of wiggly water to the sort of bottom of that image is where we're going to bring that drain above ground and create a treatment wetland there. So we're also treating the diffuse pollution, and that will also create an area of new habitat. As part of the project, we'll produce some spoil, which we're going to use to create some bunds next to the M11, which will help to deflect noise, but we can also vegetate to create some new habitat as well. So this type of treatment wetland scheme is pretty innovative. There's only a small number that have been built, mostly by Norfolk Rivers Trust, working with Anglian Water. Helen, if you can turn over the next slide. This is an example of one of the first that was created, which is in Goldisthorpe wetland in Norfolk. So the image on the left-hand side here, you can see the sewage treatment works on the left-hand side at the bottom. You can see the pools that have been created on the right-hand side, which run in a line. And between the sewage treatment works and the pools is actually a river. So in this instance, the water goes from sewage treatment works through those pools and then back into the river. The top right-hand image is the pools when it's been freshly created. So it creates a kind of sort of stark and vegetated landscape. And the image in the bottom right is, I made a visit there, I think it was last year, and you can see how that's matured and created a lovely habitat. So we will be inviting volunteers to help us plant the new habitats. Helen, if you want to go back to the slide that we had before, we will need to fence off the pools in order to keep dogs out, because their swimming would disturb the sediment and vegetation, meaning the treatment system doesn't work as well. However, we will provide public access to the habitats next to the ponds, and we'll create a viewing area with interpretation so people can see the ponds and learn about the natural treatment process. So as well as the direct benefits of creating habitats, the ponds and vegetation will absorb carbon, and the water entering the Bin Brook will be cleaner, helping to improve the environment of the brook and helping nature in the brook as well. The brook is a tributary of the River Cam, so this project will help with the wider efforts in the catchment to improve water quality. It's a reasonably significant project. The total cost is over £1.5 million. Anglian Water is the main funder of the project, and they will lead on the construction of the new pools, and they will continue to manage those pools after construction. Cambridge Past, Present and Future will lead on the habitat creation and the diffuse wetland, and will continue to manage these after the construction period. We're raising funds to be able to carry out this work, including through the Natural Cambridgeshire Fund for Nature, which will be providing around £120,000 towards this project. Norfolk Rivers Trust are also a partner in the project, and they're providing their experience of creating these treatment wetlands elsewhere, and they're leading on design and conservation work and the consenting. So in terms of timescales, we're aiming to submit a planning application this autumn. with the view of starting work in about a year's time, with the construction and creation stages of the project being completed by March 2025. There will be ongoing work to care for the new habitats that have been created and also to monitor the water quality coming out of the pools. So through this project, we will create a number of biodiversity net gain credits, which we can sell in order to pay back our loan to the Fund for Nature, and ideally which might also help to pay for some of the ongoing costs of caring for the habitats that are going to be created by Cambridge PPF. Importantly, the project potentially is replicable for other small sewage treatment works, and we hope that it can act as a demonstration project that will inspire and enable similar schemes in Cambridgeshire and across the UK. So we have got some information about the project on the Coton Reserve page of the Cambridge Past, Present and Future website, which we will update as the project progresses. And you can also receive updates by signing up to the charity's monthly Ease newsletter. So I think that's a quick run through what is quite a complex project. Just so you, I wasn't expecting you to read the text on this document, but it's the only diagram that I've got of the scheme.
Oh, yeah, I was worried about my eyes, actually, so they've been going sideways at the moment. But thanks very much, James, and for keeping to time. Also, it's got us back on schedule. Nick has had to leave us, but he's got a good appreciation, I think, from your presentation. But if we have any questions, there is one actually already from in the chat there from Bob Ench, asking whether or not are the pollutants not dangerous to wildlife, James?
No, the pollutants are primarily phosphates, so nutrient. So by going into the river, they're nutrifying the river, which you're probably aware causes algal growth and other things. So the water is treated first by the sewage treatment works, and then currently goes into the water. But the level of nutrients going in is too high. It's higher than it should be, and that's what this scheme is going to strip out, basically.
Thank you very much. Some questions. Chris again, Chris Belton.
Hi James. Hi. Really good project, James. I really like it, and obviously it's modelled on the Goldersthorpe model. And I really like the fact that in your presentation you've outlined, because this is an investment fund, you've actually talked about how where your money's going to come from. You call it a rewilding project. I mean, is it actually a rewilding project? And additional to that, are you linked with the group who are developing a rewilding carbon code at the moment?
I'm not linked to the latter, so do please send me a link through those. The rewilding element really relates to the bigger vision for the reserve. So what I didn't show on that diagram is the other side of the sewage treatment works is an area of land where we are doing some rewilding. We've been able to start through some funding from the government's Green Recovery Fund. So we have got an area there where we're creating new wetland, we're opening it up for grazing animals and so on. So the vision for the reserve is more of a kind of rewilded landscape of which this project sits within. Obviously, the treatment pools themselves have to be quite closely monitored because they're effectively a waste treatment system, and the Environment Agency has to monitor those, and they have to be a closed system. So they're not wild in any sense, other than they create natural habitat and wildlife will move into it.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Sophie, you have a question. Sophie.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It's Sophie Lloyd. I'm the ecologist for the middle level commissioners. As is quite frequent with projects of this type, that are aiming to be multifunctional, whereby you're creating biodiversity and public amenity, as well as sort of a functional aspect. It's quite difficult to find the right balance. We've got a similar project just south of Peterborough with a number of pools designed to improve the water quality from a large site before entering the mid-level system. We haven't been able to fence the pools because we have to be able to get in and regularly manage the vegetation to make sure that we keep the right balance of vegetation in there to perform its function, and desilting the pools and finding a cost-effective way of dealing with that silt without disturbing sort of the natural nutrient balance on the adjacent terrestrial land is problematic. How are you managing those aspects, and how are you reconciling sort of those often conflicting objectives in a site like this?
So, Sophie, the fencing is key to this, and interestingly, the other pools that Norfolk Rivers Trust have been working on have generally been on private land without public access. So, one of the interests in this project is around that, more public access to it. So the fencing won't go right up to the pools; it'll be set back, so that will allow vehicles to get in and do the maintenance that you're talking about. But enable us to keep dogs out. It's really the dogs that are the problem, because obviously they will get in and disturb the water and remove the vegetation from the bank. So that's the approach to that. Obviously, time will tell whether that approach is effective or not. In terms of the ongoing maintenance of the pools, to some extent, I'm leaving that to Anglian Water as part of their process for managing waste. My understanding from the pools that Norfolk Rivers Trust has built is that they haven't had any need as yet to do any of that desilting, and I guess that depends to some extent on what water is going into them. The water that's coming out of the sewage treatment works currently is reasonably clean, so it shouldn't result in a large amount of siltation. It's more going to be the buildup of vegetation dying back over time that's probably going to shallow the pools rather than the waste effluent itself. But yeah, we will need to work through some of those challenges as we go forward, and we're certainly happy to learn from what others have been doing.
Great, James, thanks very much. Unless there's any further questions, I'll just note that Catherine's put a note in the chat as well about her trip to the Netherlands and the Dutch experience, which we're trying to learn from. That's the end of the free presentations, and thank you very much to all the presenters. I think it would be, if people are agreed, sensible to have a 5-minute break now, and then to come back for the final free presentation. So time now is 10:04. If we could reconvene, please, at 10 past 10, and then to carry on with the remainder of the presentations this morning. So 5-minute break to 10 past 10. Thank you.
Martin, might I just test sharing my screen?
I think that would be a great idea. I should have actually thought about it myself.
I'll just give it a try.
Thank you. If I can leave Peter and Helen just to control for a minute, I'm just going to go and do the thing a man who's over 50 needs to do on a morning after he's had 3 cups of coffee.
I've got your slides here, Tom, if you need me to share them from this.
Yeah, I've got an error code, screen sharing failed to start, but I wonder if I'm set up as a host. I think I might need to be a host on the call.
You should be
an admin.
It's got anybody should be able to share their screen. But I could just try and see, does that make any difference?
No.
see if this works. So we've got, I can put them up for you.
Yeah, that's good. I really, if I can share it myself, that's great. But yeah, that's a great fallback. I'm just going to keep just seeing if I've got a different setting or something that's so I can possibly change it.
Have you tested already, Tom? Because I want to test mine after yours as well.
Oh yeah, so go for it. I actually didn't have much success, so yeah. Why don't you try?
Okay.
I don't know if there've been upgrades to Zoom or something. I know somebody else has had problems saying their system needed to update. But...
Right, I'm testing share now, and then that.
Yep.
Can you see the full presentation now, or because I can only see.
I could see the your desktop view.
And now?
Yeah, that's good.
Whole presentation. Fantastic. Excellent. Right. Good to go, Tom, whenever you want to test yours now.
I'm on a Mac, and I wonder, James was on a Mac as well. I wonder whether that is an incompatibility.
Shouldn't be. I'm on a Mac.
Oh.
But,
when I tried to share the screen, it just came up with 4 or 5 options, which I couldn't get them to do anything.
James, I have got an image of your map from the application, and I've popped it on the end of my slides.
Okay.
I was trying to share it with you in the chat, but it won't share images. It's just it's the emerging concept map.
Yes,
so I'll pop that. If you're okay for me to share that one, I'll share it at the end of my presentation.
That sounds like the map I was going to share anyway. But
brilliant. I was trying to get it through while you were wrestling with it, but I didn't find the right one in time.
I should have been on. If I'd done it on the iPad, I could have done it better, because I could have taken it from a photo, but I couldn't then find the photo on the Mac that I wanted.
Yeah, I just did a snip of it and popped it in.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so people can see it at the end.
Yeah.
Very exciting projects, all of them.
Okay.
I was also trying to get mine up, but I'm on a different. Your image of your of the Holy Well Needworth is on another computer, and it didn't transfer in time because the file was so big.
Like I say, you don't get a chance to practice beforehand, which, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps you could do it beforehand. Just
we're very happy to do a run through. So next time.
Yeah.
Tom, I think we just saw your slides up there.
Yeah, I think they're looking like I've got that. I actually no idea what I've done. So,
you've done the right thing.
So, yeah.
Which, if I could go through my life doing the right thing unintentionally, probably a good place to be.
Exactly. I've entered every password I think I've ever used for the last 20 years, and some things worked.
Well, we're getting close to time, actually. We're up on time now, so most people should have rejoined. So if we could then move over to Tom, to your presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you've had a refreshing break, and you've managed to do what you need to do and top up your tea. My name's Tom Martin. I'm a farmer just west of Peterborough. We farm in a little village called Helen. We farm up to the Peterborough service station on the A1M, if you can imagine where that is. And I'm often known as Farmer Tom, so if you're looking for me on social media, although I have to say, I don't think I'm even, by my record, I'm at least the 3rd best Farmer Tom just in Cambridgeshire, because you've got Tom Clarke down in Ely, who does some fantastic work, and the brilliant Tom Pearson, Dr. Tom Pearson, actually reference Dr. Nick, Dr. Tom Pearson out near Cambridge. Tom, I can see you on the call. So I'm a bit further down, and great to hear fellow farmer James talking earlier. I know James, we've done a little bit of work together, so so that's great. We're in an amazing place in farming at the moment, a remarkable place in that farming and land use are the answer to so many of the questions that society are asking, not only relating to carbon and biodiversity, but health, mental health, education, food, air, water, nutrition, soils. It's an amazing, exciting time. We have some huge challenges ahead of us. But it's one that I think a lot of farmers are really relishing, and clearly nature, biodiversity, and our environment is a key part of that. What I'm actually going to do today is just share with you some of the things that we've been up to on our farm, and then look at some of the things that we're addressing, which relate to nature, but are very much part of farming. But I just want to do a little 60-second snapshot back. Well, really a look back over the last kind of 100 or so years, when even before we had the kind of modern environmental movement, farmers were farming a lot closer to nature. They were following lunar cycles. They had a really intimate understanding of their land and soils. Often the old field margins defined specific areas of our soils and our land use. They really understood the value of wildlife, and they managed habitats from things like coppice woodland through to meadow and marsh. And they were masters at observing nature in a way that I think we're only just beginning to understand, to re-understand, to recover here in the modern age. Clearly, we had the post-war, well, the so-called Green Revolution, advent of modern, particularly wheat varieties and artificial fertilizer, which though arguably has supported 8 billion people on the planet, has had a lot of negative impacts in terms of our nature. But now we're in a place where I really think we're using our modern scientific understanding and building on the lessons of the past. So it's a really, really exciting time. So I will share my screen. Come on, let's see if this, there we go. Right, can somebody just say that they can see that screen there?
Absolutely.
You
can see it, Tom.
Lovely, thank you very much. So there's a picture of me. Great. What I thought I'd do is just take us through just some of the things we've been doing on our farm, and a lot of it actually relates to connectivity. That was something that came up in the previous presentation. So here we are, the village of Haddon, 28 houses, 58 residents, the centre of our universe, and a really beautiful part of the world. We've got 300,000 people within 10 miles. 2 major trunk routes, but we are a little, I think, largely undiscovered area. So please keep the secret to yourselves, our lovely little village of Haddon. This is what it looks like from the satellite. And what I want to do is just overlay some of the other things that the kind of natural elements that we have within that landscape. So if I just put the kind of perimeter of the land that I manage here, we've got a lot of woodland. This is something which we've planted about a dozen areas of woodland in the last kind of 30-40 years. It's something which has been done for a variety of reasons, but actually I think a lot of things that we've done on the farm have been for our own pleasure. And I think it's really, really important that farmers, we are, we're surrounded by nature. We're very much connected with it. And there's lots of things we can do, but I think you have to enjoy doing it. And that's where I think a lot of farmers find their enjoyment is through planting areas of woodland. We're probably about 70 to 80% arable on this land. 50 years ago, we would have been 70 to 80% grassland, and we've maintained a lot of our ponds. We manage them carefully. We had a Natural England visit, and they used the words abundant and diverse, which very much excited me, and is something that we really value. When we overlay that also then with our hedgerows, you can begin to see some of the connectivity in the ecosystem, in the environment here. And because we were so heavily livestock, so kind of cattle based, that a lot of those hedgerows are maintained. And as I look at it now, I can see a couple that I still haven't marked in, so I haven't quite got that 100% right. But we can see how our wildlife, our nature can not only exist in the habitat, in our ponds, in our woodlands and woodland edge, but actually can move through our hedgerows. I mean, hedgerows as a kind of woodland edge remnant are just so important as well. So that's something that I think that we take advantage of the kind of current woodland grants and things like that to help us maintain, whether that's coppicing, hedge laying, or just rotational trimming. And then we had our waterways in here as well. We are on relatively heavy clay land, well, very heavy clay land actually. We're right next to the London brick pits, which would have been kind of to the bottom right-hand corner of the image that you can see. So our land holds water. It is a clay pot, and so drainage is really important to us, but also drainage is really important in terms of our wildlife, the environment around us, and offers a kind of great connectivity through that landscape. And then we start to add in the areas of some of our government stewardship. We're part of the ELS and HLS scheme, which we've just rolled on for another year. And we'll look to go into some of the more current schemes when we're waiting for a long overdue planning determination. But the areas in orange are our overwintered birdseed mix. Now, they do exactly what they, what they say on the tin. But clearly provide habitats for much more than just our overwintering birds. But we survey through the year as well. We're part of the big farmland bird count. We have some local birders who know a lot more than I do. And in fact, recently they spotted a sandpiper and a pair of ravens as well. So that was both of them were a first for me. I have to say that I'd be able to recognize them. So it's great to have those people who can help me out there, but we provide that habitat through the Hungry Gap. And in pink, we have our wildflower areas. This is, predominantly managed for our pollinators, for our butterflies and bees, our flies, our moths, but also provide a service to us. There are areas of the farm which are more difficult to farm. They might be in a corner, they might be behind a telegraph pole, and we can manage them for our pollinators and also have them throughout the landscape. Most of the crops we grow don't require pollination, so it's not something that's important for the farm business, but it is important for our wildlife, and frankly they make me happy, so they're there. And what we've started to do in recent years, I had a visit from a friend of mine, Matt Shardlow, who runs Bug Life, based in Peterborough, and they have their beelines, their national beelines campaign, aiming to provide habitats for wildlife to move throughout the UK, and particularly as our climate largely warms, for our wildlife to progress towards the pole. But that really got me thinking about movement of our wildlife through our farm. So if I just kind of flash that up, you can see we've put in effectively pollinator strips, which is the same kind of government support as the other pollinator areas, but through the farm fields. Some of those larger fields might be 20 hectares, they could be 50 acres. And when you've got, hopefully you can see my cursor here, but when you've got a pond like this right in the middle of the field, it's very difficult for our wildlife to get from our Millennium Wood here through to the pond and through to the hedgerows in the distance. So we put a pollinator strip through the middle of the field, which for us, which as well, you know, as being beautiful, provides habitat for particularly our kind of predatory beetles that can, you know, they might only move 50 meters into the field from the margin, and so, you know, somewhere in the middle of our larger fields, they find it very difficult to access, and so we've put in to some, I think, to some benefit, those infield strips. What we haven't done is measure specifically the benefit of that. That's something that there are so many variables within this landscape, within the farm that we manage, and the variables that change from season to season. That measuring everything isn't something we've been able to do. We measure what, you know, as much as we can, but a lot of it comes from, I think, understanding the kind of latest research and putting that into practice, but also just having a kind of deep innate kind of grasp of what's going on. And so that's a picture of what our farm looks like at the moment. We are looking to add in agroforestry, but we're looking to add in lone examples of every native UK tree species. We've started a community garden, which is helping reconnect people to the environment around them in amazing ways, and we're doing a number of other things as well. So the question is how or do farmers value nature, and I hope that demonstrates that that's something that we do, and a lot of farmers will be doing this either to a greater or you know, in some cases to a lesser extent. There's no wider funding here other than our government stewardship, and we also make use of the woodland grant, which is up to £20,000 a year for woodland and hedgerow management. And then we do lots of stuff in terms of social media, public access through our walking groups and things like that as well. But this will be to a greater or lesser extent going on farms across Cambridgeshire, and clearly the cluster groups of which Tom Pearson and a lot of you will be members and be fully aware, enable them to connect between the farms as well. This is a quick glimpse of our farm plan for 2030, but I think we'll probably, in the interest of time, can't quite get into all of that. So what I thought I'd do, just to kind of close up, just for something completely different, is look ahead to some of the things that we're starting to research and investigate on the farm. And I would always be very wary of people, you know, those people who say that they're kind of ahead of the science, or they're you know, you know, the kind of, you know, those people online, the kind of do your own research people, who are above modern science. But what I wanted to share is just 3 things that we're investigating on the farm, where often due to I think lack of funding, possibly even lack of interest, there hasn't been a great deal of research, but something that we're starting to kind of cautiously put into practice in 3 areas. I'll whiz through them. The first one is seawater. We work with an international absolute guru, Nicole Masters. She's quite a remarkable lady. She's a Kiwi, lives in Montana, and is currently coaching a small group of farmers in the UK and across northwestern Europe on agroecological farming. And one of the things that she recommends to some of her farmers is the application of seawater. Now, naturally, we all think, oh gosh, you can't do that. You're basically salting the land. Even in the Bible, it said, you know, be careful about over salting the land, or, you know, they used to salt the enemy's land, all that kind of stuff. But actually, we're very low sodium here on our farm, and sodium is really important for our grasslands. Actually, doesn't make much difference to our arable land. But our seawater contains a lot, as well as microorganisms. It contains 80 to 90 different nutrients, including gold and silver. So there's lots of micronutrients which are you know, really important to our soils. So I've been having some discussions with Natural England and people like that who might get concerned about this, and we're just looking at running this as a trial, as a way to kind of improve the availability of micronutrients across our farmland, and to kind of investigate what that would be like. Clearly, seawater is free. It's relatively abundant, and you can abstract up to 20 cubic meters a day, as you can with groundwater. And so there aren't going to be many private companies that are interested in researching this. But it's something that, again, that I think where farmers and technicians are starting to investigate. I'm still at early days for this. I'm very much I'm the perpetual student. So we'll move on. We've grown a lot of this plant this year. It is buckwheat. We plant it for many different reasons. It's a great companion to our rapeseed. Some people call it canola. It's a great scavenger of phosphate. It's frost sensitive, so when we plant it in the autumn, it's killed by the frost, by which time it's already done the work. It's already started to add diversity to the ecosystem. It's grabbed hold of that phosphate. It's held onto it through those winter months, and as it dies off through the spring, it releases it back to the crop as the crop needs it as the season starts to grow. It's amazing for our pollinators. We've produced some fantastic honey from it, so it provides an additional source of income as well. But we're starting to look at how we can use it as a companion. And in fact, we're just starting to see that the buckwheat has an allelopathic effect on blackgrass, which is our main grassweed enemy. And there seems to be a microacidification around the root system of this buckwheat, such that the following year we're seeing significantly less blackgrass in our crops. This is a way of bringing diversity into our fields, not just around our fields, but into and through our fields. So how many of our crops can we include companions? Can we be planting our rapeseed and planting buckwheat at the same time? And companion cropping is just something that we do really across the farm. We've been planting rapeseed recently, and all our rapeseed has not only 5 kilograms a hectare of rapeseed seed, it has 11 kilograms of buckwheat seed. It has 3 to 5 kilograms of an annual clover. It has 5 kilograms of fenugreek, which is what makes curry smell of curry, but it also masks the smell of our brassica-based brassica family rapeseed from the beetles that want to eat that rapeseed. So we're very much starting to work with nature, and probably going back to my comments at the top, recovering things that our forefathers, grandfathers, probably great grandfathers understood far better than we perhaps do today. There we go. Buckwheat's also great for roots. You know, we want roots in the soil. We want our soil to be alive throughout the year, and it grows ever so fast. And it's great. It's great for our rooting systems as well. And there's me helping our beekeeper harvest some honey. I was very happy that day. I'd stopped the combine. There aren't many things to stop the combine for, but looking at the beehives was one of them. And then I want to talk about just variety within our cropping.
Tom, can I give you a 1 minute warning?
That's ideal. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. For a long time, we've grown monocrops, but we've also grown kind of monocultures. So we've grown single crops of wheat, but we've also grown single varieties of wheat, and each variety will have its strengths and its weaknesses. So what we're starting to do now is grow multiple different varieties of wheat within the same, for example, wheat within the same field. That has different agronomic benefits, and it means we can use less inputs. But where we're often being held back is, for example, our millers when they're milling flour and producing bread, they only want a single variety because they think they'll know how it behaves, and so it's commercially not in their interest to change their systems. But environmentally, it is in our interest to change our systems, and I'm really hoping that's something we'll be able to push through, so that the commercial interests of our millers will match the environmental interests of what's happening in the field. And not only are we growing multiple varieties of the same of a single crop, we're actually growing multiple crops in the field, harvesting them all together, and then separating them using our kind of filtering at the end. And that enables us to provide many things to the soil ecosystem at the same time, rather than just putting a monoculture in, abstracting a kind of very similar profile of nutrients and impoverishing our soils. There we are. So I wanted to give you a whistle-stop tour. I hope that was a whistle-stop tour for you. Just looking at what we're doing in terms of, I suppose, re-establishing our connection with nature and the world around us, re-establishing our understanding of natural processes, and trying to do the right thing, not only in producing food, looking after the environment, fixing carbon, cleaning the air, water, and elevating the value of our soils. Wow.
Thanks very much, Tom. That was the right expression. It was fascinating, and for me, really infusing as well. So thank you very much indeed for the presentation. It's already started a conversation in the chat with a number of questions and comments. James, for instance, James Anderson points out that farmers have been using seaweed as fertilizer, would have the same effect as seawater, I presume. But yeah, any questions directly for Tom?
I can see one in the chat. Are you planning to select trees in the light of changing climate? Great question. I'm probably not, not versed enough to kind of fully understand that. One of the things I want to do is put an oak tree network across our farm, so to make sure that our wildlife doesn't have too far to go from one oak to the next. But we haven't started to look at selecting tree varieties and things like that as well. The agroforestry, the fruit trees we're putting in will be largely local variety apples, but we're not, for example, looking further south at varieties that, or even races that would suit climates there. Really, I'm just trying to improve my soils to make my ecosystem more resilient to deal with climate change, so that the plants that we have right now can cope as things start to change.
Thank you. Well, as I say, for a newcomer to the detail of this is just absolutely fascinating and encouraging. So thank you very much for giving us the time this morning, Tom, and for all that you're doing.
My pleasure. Could I just very briefly finish by saying we run a walking group called Walk the Farming Year. If you look on social media, we'll be posting in the next week or so. We sell tickets at a reasonable price, and we have 8 walks throughout the farming year. So you walk the seasons with us. We discuss everything that's going on the farm for a couple of hours on Saturday morning. You get a free cup of tea at the beginning and another one at the end. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for the advert at the end, which is I'm sure people will take up. If we can move on to the next presentation, which is about the Natural Cambridgeshire-led projects, and Helen Dyke community projects.
Yeah, thank you. I thought I was being clever today and using my Mac because its functionality is better, but they're having problem transferring the presentation. So unfortunately, there's no presentation. However, I will speak, and I'll speak enthusiastically, and hopefully you'll know a lot of this already. So communities, as we've heard from Nick, those small projects, actually lots of them taken together can make a big difference. And we know the power of placemaking when it comes to getting communities engaged in small projects. Enthusiasm, passion drives these things. A couple of years ago now, Natural Cambridgeshire, as some of you may know, we did a pilot with the Future Parks project, just a very small pilot to see what communities were doing across Cambridgeshire. And we got an amazing response from a very short window. And so we know communities across Cambridgeshire are very, very active in caring for nature where they live. And we know that that's happening across the county. We also know there are lots of places where people aren't doing much. They'd like to do things, but they don't know how to. They need some advice. They're not sure who owns a piece of land. And so what we are now in is have a real opportunity, what with local nature recovery strategies, what with the investment from the combined authority, what with the pressures of climate change and biodiversity loss, for us to do more, because we recognise the benefits to health and well-being, and how that enables us to all live in better, healthier places. We've got this amazing opportunity. So my call to you is to also to call to action, to do more that we can in a community setting. We all operate professionally in our lives and do through farming, through conservation, through advice, whatever it may be. But if we can enthuse and turn our hand locally, if we don't already, to that very grassroots, I think we can really begin to make a difference, more of a difference there. And it's a very important difference to make. So we know that communities throughout Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are resourceful, creative, enthusiastic and motivated, and want to see nature thrive where they live, and are beginning to make this happen. We heard from Martin Baker, who said he lives in Cherry Hinton and there's no pathway to the field. So I think we have to work out what needs to be done, both from infrastructure as well as that getting volunteers, getting people enthusiastic, getting your hands mucky, getting your wellies on, getting out there on a cold day to plant trees or whatever it might be. So the Fund for Nature, which the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority have very generously enabled us to start this project, and you've seen the first 3 projects that we have selected today, and there will be a further call for projects later this year. Within that fund, we have £100,000 earmarked for communities, and we're going to be launching a grant scheme soon, very soon indeed, in the next weeks, maybe a month, that will enable communities to access small grants to do things for nature where they live. We want to make this available as broadly and widely as we can, and we will be working with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Cambridgeshire Community Foundation to help to manage that process. But I'm looking to all of you and asking all of you to promote this opportunity, and we will put it out through our networks to everybody you know, to access to whatever it might be, a community orchard, a pond, restoration of a small piece of land. We just want to get more people involved. And there is money available for capital projects, which is part of the Fund for Nature. We're also obviously working with organisations like Cambridgeshire Acre, like Peterborough Environment City Trust, the Wildlife Trust, RSPB, the National Trust, all of our partners and everybody else to want to really turn up the volume on this. And so we'll be looking for you to do that. So apologies for not having a presentation. We know that people's connection with nature is absolutely fundamental, underpins so much about what we need in order to ensure our environment does not lead to further deterioration, that we get a much more deeper appreciation, certainly within Cambridgeshire, of the value of our soils and the health of our soils. You know, healthy soil, healthy gut, you know, good mental health, basically getting those building blocks firmly in place that will enable us all to thrive and nature to thrive at the same time. So watch this space. We'll be sending out information about the community grant scheme very soon indeed. And I would a special request to you all to see if you can do a little bit more locally on your doorstep, if you're not already, to support groups, to provide advice and guidance, or even to meet, lead and mobilise volunteers. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And yeah, enthusiasm comes across again. Kind of go away energized this morning. So thanks for that. And if there are any questions, we'll take them. But I'd also just point to the chat there. Tom has put his contact details in the chat. And as some of you were asking, and also there's an offer there that you've no doubt seen, Tom, from Sue of offer assistance around trees and advice. And questions coming in now. Chris, question for Helen.
Hello, Helen. Hi, yeah, me again. When the Combined Authority gave money to Natural Cambridgeshire for natural capital investment sort of like a year ago, they also gave some money to Hunts District Council for biodiversity work. I wondered what was happening with that. I haven't had any luck trying to find out how they're going to spend the money. And I know it's not community work, Helen, but I just didn't know if Natural Cambridgeshire knew what was happening. I think they got about £1 million worth of funding.
I think Lara was on the call earlier. I don't know if she still is. She may be able to. Councillor Davenport Ray, who is an HDC.
Lara stepped away after the first set of presentations at the coffee
Lara
affair.
would have been the perfect person to ask that question. So,
Nick, did you?
I can help. So I'm the project manager for the Biodiversity for All project. So we are doing well at the moment. We are running multiple aspects of the project. So we have our strategic sites work, and we're very much doing things on the basis of we want to be evidence-based. So we've been commissioning audits, so we have the correct baselines and we have recommendations on what we can do and what biodiversity gain we'll get from said actions. So they're on our strategic sites for the district, such as Hinchingbrook Country Park, Paxton Pits, all of those sites. Then we have the community aspect, where we have identified 10 pilot sites to test out a process for giving out grants, but again, using the same aspect of being evidence-based. So we'll identify the sites, commission the audits, and then we'll invite those sites, which could be parish councils, which could be landowners, to come back with a proposal to us, which we will then consider and fund. We have recruited one graduate ecologist, and we are trying to recruit a second one at the moment. So we have the interviews next week. And we are also running a green skills program as well, which helps with training up people in the community that are not in work and education at the moment, and also give them practical skills on delivering some of those actions that have been identified on our sites to help improve biodiversity. So it's a win-win. So it took us a while to get going with it, but now the wheels are turning and we are looking to run the full grant scheme for parishes and landowners. I think we'll have 2 windows of expressions of interest, one in October and the other in January, and then deliver them that grant scheme next year. But we'd love to give a presentation on where we're at and see some of the results we've had already, and you can hear some of the testimonials of the people that have been involved in our Green Skills program. So very, very happy to do that if that's what the group would like.
Thanks very much, Nick. We'll get back to you after when we get Peter and Helen start to put together the agenda for the next meeting. So thanks for that offer. Any further?
Just add.
Sorry.
I live in Huntingdonshire, and so through the local grassroots organisation that I run here, which is in addition to my Natural Cambridgeshire work, we're certainly looking forward to welcoming Lara and is it Nick? I hope you've got the invitation as well, who are going to make a presentation to the St Ives community about the Biodiversity for All project. And so we see that the combined authorities money that we've got is going to be, it's for the whole of Cambridgeshire. And we've got some really good examples, and we did our pilot, and I'm very much on that work on an evidence-based approach. We've got some fantastic local nature recovery plans, parish local nature recovery plans that are from all around the county. Duxford's got an amazing one, John Clare Countryside. So we've got some really, really fantastic examples of good practice. Natural Cambridgeshire has its local nature recovery toolkit, which it launched in 2019, and this is available, and we've had some very good feedback on that. And so although we need to develop that, and things like skills and so forth are all part of that. So again, my call is that if we can all mobilize ourselves to do a lot of this, we can all do it across the whole county and have an amazing, thriving county with thriving nature and happy people.
Thanks very much, Helen. Any further questions or comments for Helen at this stage? In that case, we're on to our final presentation of the morning from Pamela from Natural Cambridgeshire as well, relating to, now I'm beginning to learn the abbreviations now, LNRS, and everyone speaks the language now, but local nature recovery strategies.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. I thought I would start
in my village, because actually local nature recovery is all about us and where we are across the county. This is the view from the top of the Magog Down in Stapleford in Cambridge, just across the road from Wandlebury and Cambridge Past, Present and Future. And in 1989, a local builder and a local vicar noticed that there was some agricultural land for sale at the edge of their village. And they got together with support of councils and, Natural England and its predecessors, and actually bought this land and restored it to an astonishingly diverse bit of chalk grassland that is enjoyed by all the people. And it sits slightly in isolation. It is across a very main road from Wandlebury, but there are real opportunities for this to become connected with the wider landscape. And local nature recovery is about connecting existing nature as well as creating new nature all around. So I'll just sort of from my village sort of move out towards the global context to this and the national context. So the 25-year environment plan, which was building on the Lawton report saying that we needed more nature, the Natural History Museum report saying we are one of the most nature depleted countries. We know that in Cambridgeshire, we are one of the most nature depleted counties. So we have real opportunities to develop, in the words of, or in the summary of Lawton, the more, bigger, better and more joined. And building on that, and the context of that now is the Environment Act that built on the 25-year plan that then said, all of you, every county, every local authority must do a nature recovery strategy. It's a statutory obligation. And the responsible authority for this is the combined authority. So I'll just move on. For those of you who haven't necessarily come across this before, some of you may have seen this slide, but the purpose of the natural recovery and the nature recovery strategy is to identify locations where nature is already thriving and locations where nature could thrive, and to make that into a document that sets out aspirations from everyone across the county, from landowners to non-governmental organisations to communities, and to everyone who has a potential view on this, and then to distill this down into a series of biodiversity priorities. What habitats in the counties, what species in the counties, and what do we have already, and how does that all connect up? And by November next year, the responsible authority, the combined authority, needs to deliver this back into central government and to have the support of all of those stakeholders. And just as another reminder, here is the current spatial plan. It's a map from Natural Capital Solutions around our sort of current habitats. The yellow you can see is the arable land. We are largely an arable county. We are very much, one of the bread baskets, and that's really, really important. I saw a question in the chat earlier, what about food production? Absolutely, nature recovery needs to be done with agricultural production. And I believe that we can work with landowners and farmers to make sure that that happens. And then the right-hand map is sort of where really our current biodiversity is. Those darker areas are those areas of identified local nature. And we don't have a standing start here. We really have a lot of mapping already developed and a lot of knowledge already developed. And the combined authority is funding the Wildlife Trust to update quite a lot of that in collaboration with the local reference centre. And I suspect quite a few of you've seen this map before, but this is really important because this is a statutory obligation. So it comes through local councils who have a planning obligation. And I think when it was first of all conceived, it wasn't necessarily sure that each of those districts which had a planning obligation would have a key role in this. We thought they might be consultees. In fact, they've now been allocated as supporting authorities, and each and every one of them needs to make sure that they are supportive of it and that they have had input on it, and they even have a way in which they could stop it if they are not involved, because they are obviously the elected representatives of all of the local people, but they also manage land themselves. And so on our steering group for this, we have a representative from the combined authority, we have a representative from the county council, which has been charged by the combined authority with implementing the local nature reserve. And we have also a representative from the Peterborough City Council, the Unitary Authority, as well as Natural England and Natural Cambridgeshire. So these statutory organisations are charged with enacting the local nature recovery strategy. There are regulations which are guiding this, and there is also guidance that is being developed and evolving. And we have currently elements that we are already preparing. We have lots of cross-county collaboration, stakeholder engagement is ongoing, and we need to create a document that everyone can get behind. We don't have a standing start. If any of you are athletics fans, you may know that if you start the 100 meters that somebody starts when the gun goes off is a lot slower than the 100 meters that you compete in the 4x100 relay, because you have this, you are having the baton passed on, you are part of a team, and you create a much speedier process for getting through. In January this year, Natural Cambridgeshire and the County Council had conversations with each of the district councils to really ask them, are the priority landscapes that we have developed in collaboration with the NGOs, are these something that could be some of the building blocks for local nature recovery? And they said yes. And we also asked them about the kind of collaborative vision for doubling nature. Are you still on board with this? And they're absolutely still on board. So we've got this rolling start to the local nature recovery. And our next step here is to develop this inclusive engagement and communication plan. And Natural Cambridgeshire is charged with leading this on behalf of and in collaboration with the County Council as an element. And we are putting together a plan, and that will be from October. We will be creating this plan, and we will be consulting on it. We'll make sure that everyone is involved. And in May this year, we had a workshop where key representatives from our wide stakeholder community came and shared with us where we have got to so far and where we want to get to make sure that we are mapping all of our stakeholders, we are including them. If you feel you are a stakeholder in this, do get in touch, and you feel you haven't necessarily had contact from us, but we are starting this point of building this and building on what is already in action. A key part of this as well is that it's not all being done in-house. So we have currently, and even this afternoon and this week, we are evaluating tenders from external consultants to do the authoring. So to bring together all of this information that is going to come in from the stakeholders and to create a clear, concise and simple, coherent plan, and also to make sure that this map is supported by a consultancy that can create visual representations of what the ambition is for the region. I think it's a thread that's run through today, and it's a thread that runs through Natural Cambridgeshire and its kind of conversations and its ambitions, in that landowner engagement will be key to the success of nature recovery. We have begun to identify all of the existing clusters, but we know that one of the key elements of the local nature recovery strategy is it will be for everyone, everywhere. So even if those landowners are not in existing clusters, how can we provide support to them? And the mayoral fund has identified some additional funding for sustainable land use, where we can support landowners in relation to nature recovery. And we will be working with the combined authority to put in a bid for how this is best, how this best funds support for landowners. Local authorities are absolutely key to this, making sure that consultations which go out once we have done our stakeholder engagement go out through local authorities. The county will lead this in terms of the public consultation, but we are working very closely with each of the districts to have those conversations to make sure that we are going in the right direction. You know, they have the opportunity to put their hands up at the very end and say, well, nobody talked to us and we don't agree with this. And we absolutely don't want that to happen. We really want to make sure that local leaders of councils and politicians, as well as local officers, are key to this. And so Natural Cambridgeshire and the county and the combined authority having these conversations along the way and aligning with elements such as the Hunts District Council element for biodiversity. It's interesting that through the House of Lords at the moment is going an amendment, potential amendment to the Levelling Up Bill, which says that instead of a slightly weakened phrase that local planning authorities need to have regard to the local nature recovery strategy in their planning decisions, it's proposed that they take account of it. And whether this will go through or not is, we don't know this yet, but that will strengthen that. And it means that that local authority engagement is absolutely key to this. The timeline of next steps is that we will put forward the plan in October, and that will be shared with all of the local authorities and the stakeholders. We will then begin our next phase of consultation. You know, we have been talking to communities already. Helen has run a community event in March, and we are continuing to have community events as we go along. And then by December, we will have done our initial consultations with landowners and farmers on this next stage and be starting to pull together those elements of what are the habitats, what are the opportunities, what do we want to put in our map, and start to build that in. And alongside this, we have the biodiversity net gain coming in, and we have our nature fund, which we will be launching the next phase of in order to support the delivery of nature recovery across the county. I think that is all for now, and I think we're heading up to the timing of the end. There is, of course, lots to say. Very happy to have conversations about this. There may be opportunity for questions. I hand back to the chair.
Thanks very much, Pamela, and thanks for a really great, clear presentation and an exciting opportunity for us all, I think, to contribute to the strategy. There is 5 minutes for questions. If people have questions or comments, then we can take them now. Yeah, I think, Pamela, thanks so much for that. And I think probably got people thinking and seeing the opportunity to contribute. So thank you, everyone, for joining this morning. I hope you found it useful and interesting. Certainly I did. I mean, I'm sort of on a learning journey, but really infused by everything I've heard this morning. So thank you, all of you, for being part of this community. And again, thank you once again to Peter and Helen for drawing it together. And thank you also to our speakers this morning. And as I look over the fields in Manchester, I'll be thinking about a lot more things as I look at them now, as I go about my day. So have a great day, and be ready for the autumn. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Do you want to stop the recording, Helen?
Thank you.